Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. Something struck Gregory A. Schnitzler when he first went to Wall Street as an investment consultant, and it became the basis for his book, Black Capitalism, 1971, Today, Tomorrow.
What happened was, when I worked on Wall Street back in the 70s and early 80s, I noticed that there were no Black people working anywhere on Wall Street, not in small firms, I worked at Goldman Sachs. You couldn't find one Black person anywhere near Wall Street. So I used that theme in my MBA thesis at St. John's University. So that was my MBA thesis in 1971 on Black capitalism. And then what happened was, about right before the pandemic, a friend of mine called me and said, "Guess what? I'm going to write a book." And I said, "On what subject?" And he said, "On Black capitalism." I said, that was my thesis almost 50 years ago. And we decided to co-write this together. He and I were going to write the book together. What happened was he had some personal issues come up and he couldn't move forward with it. So I decided I was going to write it on my own. So that's why it was basically as a result of a phone call that this book was written.
Tell me how you lay out your book.
Well, I laid it out. I looked back at 1971, looked at my thesis, what has changed in the last 50 years. And then I'm looking forward to the next 50 years. What would 50 years from now look like? And so what I found was, certainly there has been an improvement. Blacks do now work on Wall Street, and they're working in industries that did not work 50 years ago. But just to give you a couple of examples, in the medical profession, doctors and surgeons make up 5% of all blacks make up 5% of surgeons, doctors in this country, while their representation in the total population is 13%. A little more than 13% of the U.S. population is Black. So there's a big lag there. The same with attorneys. 5% are Black, not 13%. And the list is pretty long. Airline pilots flying for domestic carriers, 2%, not 13%. You look at the chief executive officers, CEOs of Fortune 500. You can count them on the fingers of one hand, and not much better as far as chief executive investment officers are concerned. I mean, it's just they're not anywhere close to where they should be proportionally. 13% population, but they're lagging far behind in some of these industries as of today. So I'm looking forward to 50 years from now and say, how is this going to change? Is this going to improve or not over the next 50 years? And I'm looking at America's failing inner city public schools. The kids that come out of these schools, whether they graduate or not, are not ready to compete effectively in today's economy. And somebody needs to do something to make that. I really don't know what it is. I'm looking at the Oval. Someone occupying the Oval Office needs to say, this can't continue. But I don't know. I mean, that's still an open question. But that's what I'm recommending.
We need to revamp inner city schools. That's another story that has come up over and over and over again, and we've taken students out of their neighborhoods and bused them to better schools and vice versa. We've tried to mix it up. I don't know what the answer is, but I wonder sometimes how badly we want to find the answer.
Oh yeah, it would be a huge investment to do this, I mean, no doubt. but the payback could be really excellent if it worked. Excellent, so.
Do you put forth any ideas as to what we could do?
Only that it cannot be left to individual school boards or individual governors or mayors. I mean, that's not going to happen. It can't be school board by school board, state by state. It has to be a central program that changes the way these schools operate. It's going to be a political nightmare if somebody wants to take that on.
Yeah. Well, remember No Child Left Behind and, standardized tests. So standardized tests are supposed to, bring every...
Yeah. I do mention that, previous administration, have tried that. And it worked a little bit, but then it faded away again. It sort of died a slow death.
Yeah. The only thing I can say here is in doing stories like this, teachers will tell you and administrators will tell you that it's difficult when the parents aren't involved.
Yes.
And I have good friends I have one good friend in particular who teaches in an inner city school. And, the kid comes in with a gun in his backpack. He's been up all night because the police were at the house. The back to school night, nobody shows up.
Yeah.
You don't have to be rich to be a good parent.
Right.
It's difficult. Two parents working all the time, mom and dad working overnight. It's a monumental problem. And without the parents' involvement, I wonder, I don't care if you're black, white, Hispanic, if your parents are involved in your education, what are the chances you're going to get ahead? Now, J.D. Vance would probably say, well, my mother was a drug addict, but I had my Meemaw, raise me in his fictional story based on his life, but he didn't grow up in Ohio. But you know what I'm saying? Yes. He would say he pulled himself up and out and look where he is. So it can be done. And I'm sure there's African Americans that have pulled themselves up.
Oh my God, yeah, I do give some examples in the book of really successful billionaire black people. There's no doubt.
And they do it in the face of all odds, but usually they're pretty intelligent.
Yep.
But you basically leave the question at, we got to figure this out.
Yeah. I mean, there is a difference between being intelligent and being educated.
Yes.
You can be intelligent, but not well educated.
Right.
I mean, there's a difference. I mentioned that in my book.
Yeah. Darn. Are you going to follow the trends at this point? I mean, where do you go from here?
Well, the kind of things that you and some other people are going to do, put it out there, put it on Facebook, put it on, so a lot of people can learn about it.
Are you in a situation where you could go out to a library and talk about this?
Yes, actually, I'm working on that right now. Actually, yes, I've contacted Black museums, Black libraries. And, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Right now, I don't know much else I can do except, see how it moves forward. I have my daughter-in-law. She is in advertising and so on and so forth. She thinks that February, Black History Month, would be a great time to get this book out there for introduce it to Black people. During that time, and she's going to help me do that. So, other than that, I'm open to suggestions.
that would be really good. Do you still know people at the college that you went to?
Actually, not personally. I did contact them, ask them to put the book in their library and see. Actually, I've been remiss. I have not followed up on that. Make sure that was done.
For an economics class, how great would it be to focus on how do we finance better inner city schools?
I taught some investment courses at Virginia Commonwealth University. I did forward the book to them, St. John's University, and, some of the Virginia schools. But so far we'll have to just wait and see if anything if anything sticks.
Yeah, you really have to get behind it, though. I will say, the people who write decent books, who really get behind the book, at least make enough money to pay for it.
Yes, I need to sell like 500 to get to break even.
Yeah, well, with a book like this, that might happen.
Yeah, okay, I hope so.
I mean, you raise a very important question in our society today. There are people who think that the playing field has been leveled. Do you feel that the playing field has been leveled?
Not until these schools are fixed. No.
Yeah, very interesting. Gregory, very good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David Wendel is a real estate appraiser in Nevada who started writing 3 years ago after he got tired of reading other people's novels. Besides that, he had a pretty good story he was already thinking about entitled It All Started in Tuscarora.
Well, I was fortunate to be in a situation in the early 1970s when I was in college. I had a summer job working for the Nevada Division of Forestry out in eastern Nevada. And I was given a patrol area 30 miles by 80 miles north of Elko, which is it's really mountainous. And there are some pine trees here and there, but it's mostly desert land. Within the valleys are large, very large ranches, cattle ranches. And I was to patrol an area that included Tuscarora, which is an old mining town from the 1870s and 80s. And by the time I got there in 1972, it was pretty much deteriorated down to about 5 or 6 people that lived there.
Oh, geez.
And I got to know those people because I was charged with making a map of the town, because there really wasn't one, a recent one, and got to know some of the people and some of the things that were going on. And it was really a different time. Nevada is always about 10 years behind California in terms of social changing, and Eastern Nevada in the 1970s was dominated by large ranches, and they really hadn't changed much from the 1930s. The only thing that kept Eastern Nevada going was I-80 freeway through Nevada to get to California from Utah. And there are towns about 60, 80 miles apart which service the freeway. Oh. And at that time, station the first summer, they only had about 2,500 people, and it was a very rural thinking town. And there were quite a few adventures to be had by a city boy. I live in Reno.
Okay.
So by comparison, it was a lot different.
Right. Yeah.
And that it's just such a different place. It's just so beautiful to me out there. The wide open spaces you can see for 30 miles. There's high mountains around you. In the late spring, there's still snow on them, and it's just kind of magical out there, in my opinion. And that was the first summer I ran into quite a few little situations, and I described those in my book. And then the second summer, I had a trailer in Tuscarora that I lived in, and that was after I graduated. And there's a pottery school there, and every July, the guy that runs it has 35 students for a month, and you are 53 miles from anywhere in Tuscarora, 53 miles northwest of Elko. And most of the people that come to those are young college ladies. And I had a trailer right next to their place.
Nice.
Nothing really happened. I ended up going out with a school teacher that was living there. But from there, the story really takes off. It's about an adventure for a young man coming of age that took him all over the place, searching for lost treasure.
Were you really searching for lost treasure, or were you did this story come to you? Were you inspired by Tuscarora?
I could give you my live answer that I can't answer because statute of limitations, but actually the story came to me.
It came to you, a dramatic chase across Europe.
Yeah.
Clues about Nazi gold.
Yeah.
In Tuscarora, there were clues about Nazi gold?
Actually, I bought a gun, a Luger, that was a World War II Luger, And in the grip, I took it apart because it was a little bit dusty and dirty. And inside the grip was a couple notes and some microfilm.
No.
This is how the story goes, okay? And it describes where there might be great wealth hidden by a German submarine captain.
So, in your book,
In my book.
you went off to look for this.
And from there are people chasing that gold for 25 years, and they haven't found it. And they're looking for that Luger, and they're looking really hard. And they trace me to having it in Tuscarora. And from there, there's quite a bit of an adventure that goes from England to France and then to Switzerland.
So this was quite an inspiration you got here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let me explain. I started writing the book about all of my kind of adventures in Tuscarora and Elko and all that sort of thing, and the bigotries involved and all kinds of things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was writing it, I also do a lot of other reading, and I came upon some plot points that I thought would really, really juice it up. And it did.
So we follow your character. What's the name of your character?
I purposely did not give my protagonist a name.
So this guy goes all over Europe.
Yeah.
Does he ever come back?
Yep.
Do you wrap this all up in one book?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm a real estate appraiser.
okay.
So I write succinct, small statements,
Okay.
usually. And unfortunately, it comes through in the book.
So let me ask you this. This would be a great book to buy in Tuscarora. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, this would be a great place to have a book signing. Because who would think that you would find something, that anybody could find something so valuable in Tuscarora?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, are you telling people about your book, or do you have any plans to promote it in any way?
Well, I signed up for the New York Library Association book fair. I was thinking about going to the stores that offer Nevada specialty stuff.
Yeah.
And there is a community book fair in Reno. I was too late to get into that when I found out about it. And I will go there and make my presence known and try to get in on it next year. In terms of book signing, you know, my high school class, I put it in the newsletter, and I've tried to promote it in other ways. You know, we'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Are you going to keep writing?
I have written 2 other books, and I'm working on a 4th. I was hoping this might take off and I could get a real publisher, you know?
That could happen because you've got like an Indiana Jones kind of a thing going on here, man.
That's one of my favorite movies, you know? I love the Alfred Hitchcock kind of thing where, like, his first real good one was 39 Steps.
Yes.
Where the average guy gets caught up in a situation and has to use his wits to get out of it.
Right.
And that's kind of my, at least for this book, that's my genre, you know?
It's even a little 007-ish too.
Yeah. The people that have read it really like it. They say they get done in 2 or 3 days, you know?
Oh, you know what? There's script writing classes, and there's, you know, there are ways that you can submit this to like Netflix. I know that there are people who have done that. But it's a very interesting story. It really is.
And it's kind of an every guy gets caught up in it, you know, uses a little bit of gumption. And
yeah,
the other protagonist in the book is a guy I met in Elko the first summer, and we were staying in a rooming house. And after a week or so, Elko at that time was divided by railroad tracks, and the feds paid for a fire station on the other side of town.
Oh, geez.
But they would not pay for staff to be there.
Oh.
Okay. So me being this new firefighter, they offered me the chance to live in this new fire station rent free. All I had to do was roll with their fire truck to a fire, and they would take over, you know, because the big sophisticated city fire trucks are much different than, you know, like a simple brushland fire truck. And so they said, well, you just get it there and we'll be there by then. And so they said, the chief said, well, I like you there, but you're not there all the time. do you know somebody else that would stay there? And I said, sure, I know a guy from the rooming house that would love to stay there. So I went to the rooming house. I said, hey, Paul, what do you think? And he said, no brainer, I'm in there tomorrow. And I called the fire chief and I said, look, this guy's a master's degree engineer. He's working in a pipeline thing out here in Nevada. Can he stay there? And he said, yeah, sure. And so about a week later than that, the fire chief came through in the evening after we went to bed, and he called my boss. And my boss called me in the morning at about 6:30 and said, who do you have living with you? And I said, well, this engineer, Paul. And he said, well, is he black? And I said, yeah. And he said, you're in big shit.
What?
The fire chief said if he would never allow a black man in his fire station.
That's horrible.
Well, it was 1972, Elko. You've got to understand.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, well, yeah.
This is rural anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And he said, Dave, you're in big poop, but he can't do anything to you now that guy's there, but he's going to take it out on you somehow. And so from there, it got worse with the fire chief, but all these things all happened. There were many, many things that happened. And for kind of an outsider that was there, it was kind of hilarious.
Yeah, it's all good stuff. So we find out what happens to him.
We do, yes. He was from Uganda, okay? And then that was in 1972, by 1973, Idi Amin had taken over Uganda.
Right.
And the Russians were courting Idi Amin in Uganda. So Paul was in a really precarious position because his family was in the government there.
Oh, man.
So I could tell you more.
But don't.
Yeah.
You can't make this stuff up, but maybe you can. It all started in Tuscarora.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been appraising here in Reno for 50 years. And
you're a firefighter.
No, I was a firefighter when I was a kid.
No, in your book, the character is a firefighter. Yeah.
I was the firefighter. I actually put out a big fire right at Tuscarora.
That's too much. All right, listen, David, thank you.
Thank you very much.
The 6th book in the Home Office Lord series is out. It is entitled The Sisters' Royal Dilemma. This from a woman who considers herself more of a reader than a writer, but 6 books is pretty impressive, Lor E. Lynn. What made you start writing in 2014?
I don't know. I just really love reading certain kinds of stories, and I can't find them anymore. And I had a dream one night, and I get some really creative dreams sometimes, and I woke up and started writing, and then I had given it to my niece to read, and she loved it, and after that she wouldn't let me not keep writing. So
this reminds me of Bridgerton.
Yeah, it's like that same timing kind of thing as Bridgerton.
The time period.
Yeah.
So what do we need to know about where we are? This is the 6th book. So give me a little background.
Okay. They're historical fiction. So they're around historical times between kind of towards the end of the American Civil War, that time span. But they start in England, and it's a group of guys that are friends and also that work part-time for the English Home Office, which is similar to our FBI. Foreign Office is similar to the CIA kind of thing. And so they're overseeing like the officers coming back, soldiers coming back from the war and not having any jobs. And so there's a lot of unrest in England. There's also unrest because of the potato famine in Ireland, and the English aren't doing enough to help them. And so half of the population of Ireland either emigrates out of Ireland or die. And that's more, you'll see more of that in book 7. But book 6, I'm come from a really close family. I mean, my sister and I were less than a year apart. And so the sisters that are in this book are very close. They actually have royalty in their background, and Queen Victoria in that time span put some of her relatives on over 23 thrones across Europe. So I kind of made a fictitious one where this is kind of the same thing. It's like some of these countries would come to Great Britain and say, we need help. And they knew that Russia and Germany and a lot of these other countries were afraid of England. And so if they had an English person on the throne along with their person, then they would get backup from Great Britain. And so the one young guy comes to England and asks for help to find a royal bride. And the father of these girls are like, nope, not letting, because he didn't just agree with arranged marriages, because they just, a lot of times they don't work. And he said, I'm not sending my daughter to some foreign country way away from here and not knowing if she's going to get along with him. And so he invites them to his annual house party, and they meet there. And so it's a whole thing about how they meet. But underlying through this whole thing, there is where the home office lords are trying to find out who and why these people are trying to undermine the English government. So it's some drama and mystery kind of thing, and a little bit of romance. I don't write erotica. That's one of the reasons why I started writing, because there's a lot of that out there. I wanted to write something that even teenage girls could read and their moms wouldn't be afraid of them reading it. I have guys reading it because they like the drama in it. And my mom and mother-in-law don't need to know how much I know in my personal life kind of thing. And I wanted a good story. And I've always loved that genre of books. So it just fit in that's what I've been doing. So even after the first book, it's like, okay, now I really like this character. Where's the character going to go? So that's why I decided to continue the series. They can be read as a standalone, but they fit best, read in a row.
Where did you leave off on book 5?
On book 5, there's a lot of these different couples that have been in the other books, and a lot of them are coming back together for this annual house party.
Okay.
And so the beginning of the book, the girls don't have their bows yet. It's as the story goes along is how it develops the relationships, the two different girls. And it also pulls in another royal person, another guy, with maybe a clear head or outside ideas about what's going on in England. So he kind of opens their eyes because he sits in on a couple of their meetings. And so it's the plans are starting to come along, and they're figuring out who these people are that are trying to undermine the government.
Okay.
So the story starts out where they're planning this house party, and they're going to come in, and then a visitor comes from the crown to see the dad, saying the queen wants one of your daughters for this arrangement. And he's like, nope, not going to happen. But he can come here to my house party as a guest, and if they form a relationship or a likeness to each other, then he said, then I won't step in the way of it. So all through the whole book, the girls there's 2 sisters, and there's the prince, and then a really good friend of the princess. So they're trying to figure out who should go where. And at the same time, they're trying to figure out why England's being attacked. And the reason this house party is an annual house party, but they move it up a month because they're going to have a special meeting of Parliament because of all this unrest. And in actual England at the time, there were banks failing, and they actually did recall the prime minister and elected a new one. So I'm kind of tying that in, where these guys are going to have to all be available for that parliamentary meeting to vote in a new prime minister.
Do you resolve that, or is that the next book?
It's mostly resolved in this book as far as they know. The meeting's already been called, but they haven't actually gone to it yet. Okay. In this book. Like I said, these other couples are coming back. So there's a couple in the book 1, there's a couple in book 2. Each book has a couple, a guy and a girl. And in book 6, they're all coming together at this house party, the ones that have been formed so far and the ones that are still single.
Okay.
And this investigation going on. And the prince's mom doesn't want him marrying an English girl. She wants him marrying a German girl. She's German. And Germany's going through its unification at this point. And the prince does not want to unify with Germany because he doesn't want to be some puppet. So he goes against his mother's wishes to come to England to bride. Okay. So, and it goes through the steps of what the mother tries to do to stop the marriage, and how he stands up to her. And
that's got to be ugly.
And it ends with the one couple coming back again to England a couple months later to be there for the wedding of the younger sister.
Okay. How many books are in this series?
8.
You got 2 more to go.
Correct.
Have you finished them?
Book 7 is written. It's in the rewrite stage, which I don't know if you know this, but I hate that stage because I get too defensive about what's wrong with that. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. Or I need to add something, and I'm like, okay, what do I want to add here? So book 7 is written. It's just in the rewrite stage, and I'm in the process of writing book 8, which is the final one. There will be spin-offs probably more like anthologies, like you put like a combination of 4 or 5 stories together. 4 or 5 of the different characters didn't have their own books, but those are going to be like just like little spin-off type things. But the bulk of this series is the 8 books.
Have you been able to develop a following?
So far, yes. Not as much as I'd like to have, but yes.
How have you done that?
A couple of different ways. One is through book signings and doing the blog and stuff online. The other one is getting libraries involved and school librarians, like middle school librarians. One of my better friends from college was a teacher and then became a middle school librarian. And she was looking for books that would be for like 14, 15-year-old girls to start, where they want a little romance, but nothing like their mom wouldn't want them to reading. I grew up with Barbara Cartland books, and I'm kind of thinking of my book as a Barbara Cartland book, along with like a Nancy Drew or a Trixie Belden kind of mystery
Right.
thing involved in between. And so these mothers of these girls have been helping, and my high school has been helping, and the school where my friend was the librarian, and she's passed it on to other librarians for that same thing. And I've got a couple of middle school girls that are doing like book reports or projects along the lines with mine.
That's wonderful.
So I have another book signing coming up in my hometown where, because they called me and asked me to come again. And they had me come speak at the high school on Career Day.
That's great.
It was really cool because there's girls in the classroom saying, I read that book. I had it from the library downtown. So it's a whole thing about making sure the libraries are involved as well.
Yeah. Would that be your advice? Because that is the biggest thing that I face when I'm interviewing authors. They just, have you done anything? No.
Well, you got to do something. Well, and I'm a member of Wisconsin Writers Association and Romance Writers Association.
Okay.
But I haven't gone to like any of the Comic-Cons or any of that kind of stuff, but I've gone to a lot of individual book signings, group book signings, which is really cool when they get a panel going, or I've gone as a guest to some of those panels.
How did you do that?
Part of it is contacting the libraries and asking them if they do book signings or if they do group signings, to let them know that my stuff is there and I'm available for that too. Other ones is just finding out from the local libraries when things are going on, so then I can go there and participate even in the audience. And working with Page Audiobooks Network has done the first 5 books, or they're in the process of doing them. Book 1, working with Page, and there's an offshoot of Page that does screenplays. So now they want me to start going to some of the film festivals, or to some of the area local universities to their film departments. Because he said a lot of times they have people that want to act, they have film crews that want to film, but they don't have a good screenplay to do it around.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so they've done a short screenplay for book 1. It's supposed to be like a teaser, and that just got finished. So now I need to start helping them or go and see about like talking to my college where I went to the university and talking to their film department and some of these other ones. And I'm working with the local library here to work on a group author event for next year. It's just, I guess it's just really just getting out there, getting the people. And some of the people that we always get our first 10 books, the author copies. Mine are all pegged for either family members that read and help me with my books, or beta readers that have agreed they're going to do a review. Because I think that's another thing authors have a really hard time finding, is people to review their book for them.
Right. All good advice, Lori. All good advice.
Thank you. And if you want to be a reviewer of my books, just let me know and I'll send you a copy.
All right, Lori. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alice.
Audri White has been in some kind of sales all of her life, and more recently in recruiting. So who better to write How to Be a Superstar Salesperson? And it seems writing comes naturally to you.
I always found myself writing, either for the paper. In high school, I wrote for the paper. In college, I wrote for the paper. Not a book so much. And, I always enjoyed it. I enjoyed writing. I enjoy writing more than reading. I do like to write.
It's a big leap to go from just writing for the paper to publishing a book.
Right. Let me help you connect the dots here. I never really thought about being a published author or anything like that. But I'll tell you, it started initially by my helping out my husband, who was managing partner, and he hired people. And this was 10 years ago. And I was helping out, I was assisting, and I noticed some of his people just didn't have sales backgrounds. And they struggled because they didn't have sales backgrounds. They were great people, they were smart people, they would have been successful eventually, I'm sure. But it took a while for them to get up and running, and many of them just couldn't invest the time it took to be successful. And then they had to leave and do something else because it takes a while. It certainly takes a while in certain industries. Certain industries, you're really not considered experienced until you've done that work for 2 or 3 years,
Right.
You know, and that's true of the insurance industry. And because I've sold highly technical types of equipment and that kind of thing, this is really intended for the really professional salesperson. Okay, it's not for like retail sales or something like that. It's for people who sell in financial services or higher tech products where, there's a longer sales cycle before you're truly.
Before you can close.
Yeah, or successfully on your own. There's something to it. There's just a process. There's a lot to learn. And these people were not learning fast enough to make enough money to stay in the industry. And I thought, gosh, there's got to be something that we can do to help them, And I had the sales background, so.
Now, you say, the things that you lay out in your book could help not just salespeople, but anybody.
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I get the impression that you give specifics on how to, like you mentioned, the chapters, art of connecting, art of listening. Give me an example of what I'll find in your book when you say the art of connecting, for instance. What do you mean?
Okay. Well, I give you the actual steps. For example, let's say you're in line at the coffee shop and you're actually prospecting. You're looking for people to sit down with eventually and talk about your business, what you'd like to sell to them. Well, you can't just walk up and start talking. There's a process of connecting with people.
Right.
So I share with them a system that I learned about connecting. It's called CAPI. This is just one of the systems in the book that you can use if you're in sales. And CAPI gives them specific instructions on how to connect. CAPI is an acronym for C is for connecting, A is for affirming, P is for permission to ask a question, and then I is for informing them. So if you do CAPI in that order, connecting with someone, connecting just means exchanging, just acknowledging someone's presence, just good morning, how are you? That's connecting. Affirming is saying something positive, that you might notice, like, I don't know, their handbag, their shoes, their hair, their suntan, whatever it might be.
Okay.
P is asking permission. Do you mind if I share something with you? And what you're going to share is your sales pitch, which you already know and have down cold, obviously. It's your pitch. Everybody in sales has a pitch, or they should have a pitch. If they don't have a pitch, that's a very important missing. They should have a pitch. And then I stands for informing. And when you ask them if you can share something with them and they say yes, well, they have to listen to what you are going to share. So you ask for permission and they say, yeah, sure, okay. And then you inform them. And what you're informing them of is what you have to offer. And so that's just a simple form of connecting with a complete stranger. Now, that's just something you can use if you're in line at the grocery store, or if you're at the Starbucks, or if you're at the shoe store, wherever. So, I mean, it's just a system. And what I share are systems on how to connect and how to get in front of a potential customer, how to get in front of, a client that you want to sell to. I also talk about what you need to do when you get in front of them, the questions that you need to understand. When you're talking to someone in business, manufacturing, for example, they want to know about cost and productivity and, what are you going to show me that's going to make my job more simple, or how are you going to make things easier for me?
How can I make more money by doing less?
Exactly.
How can I make more money by spending less money?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Let me ask you this. I mean, there's a lot of sales books out there. What makes yours stand out?
Yeah, mine is turnkey. It's turnkey. It's from beginning to end. It's from very beginning when you meet someone, building rapport. It's about connecting. It's about those questions that you need to understand about this potential client in order to eventually close the deal. There's just information you need to have. And I show you how to share your product or service, how to highlight your product or service favorably. You can do that now. So I teach, the systems, what you need to understand about your client, how to put your product or service in the best light compared to what they're doing currently, because you've learned that, you've asked the right questions. And then you pre-close. You ask, if I could do this for you, if I can show you how to increase your productivity, reduce your waste, reduce your cost, be more competitive in this way or that way, do you think we could do business together? Essentially, you pre-close. Now, probably they're going to say, yeah, if you can do these things that you say,
right,
absolutely. Show me what you can do. So then it's on you to, come back with, a proposal that reflects what you've talked about in the meeting, in the initial meeting. And, it's all about that initial meeting, because the reality is if that initial meeting isn't a good meeting, you're probably not going to get invited back. So that initial meeting needs to be a really good initial meeting. And I teach you how to prepare for that.
So you're going to keep writing?
Well, I do have a second book in mind, Alice. I don't like to talk about it too much because I don't like, I always think I'm going to jinx myself. But it is a book about women in business. It's particularly about women and their rise in the business world.
That's a great idea.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that encouragement. I do. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
No, not at all. Is it over?
That's it. You're done.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Working with families and children with learning disabilities in Alabama, the death of her mother, and animals that seem to like her house all contributed to the story Derise C. Smith came up with in her first book, House of Bears and Webbits, Rose's New Beginning. Took a while to get here, though, didn't it?
The writing started up way back in 94. I was writing a few little outlines. I said, what do you think about this storyline? And my dad had said, yeah, you better start writing this down. That's a good idea. And I was working 60 hours a week. So, I wrote very little, but got a few things down. And then my dad got ill. So I had to place him in a board and care. And for about 4.5 years, had to oversee his care because, as you know, elderly people are not treated very well in this country.
No.
No. And I had to fight to be his advocate and get things that, he really should have. But he passed away in 2001, and I had a little bit more time. So I started kind of getting it together, but I was still working crazy hours. So long story short, it did take me a while. And I kept thinking, I'm never going to be published. I didn't even know how to go about it, really. But I finally got it finalized, and I sent it out, and I heard an advertisement by Fulton Books on television one night, and I thought, okay, I'll give them a call. So they had told me that on the initial submission that they really liked it. I sounded like Sally Field on her acceptance speech. You really like it? You really like it?
What inspired the story?
I think it was just happenstance. I wanted to show that any adversity, when you've got family and friends, even if they're not, quote, related to you, or even if they are, and you have a kind of a nice mix, they really will help you, and they will support you. So that's what I've tried to show in the first book that I've done. Um, a story I made up about, a certain little wabbit that came into our family, but it is set up against some things and our own human family that have really happened. So she had come to live with us, so to speak, and it was just a few years later that, for instance, my mom did pass away. And so when she had gotten the baby and gotten custody back, my mother had become ill in real life with lung cancer, and she passed away in 4 months. So I was trying to show how supportive Bears and Wabbits were to me and my dad in turn after, we had been supportive of Rose and her efforts to get her daughter Peaches back. And I wanted to make it real without being boring, people reading about all these critters that we have. And, so yeah, that's kind of the way the format, took hold.
So it's based on a rabbit that came into your life, right?
Right.
And it's also based on your mother.
Right. My mom actually did really buy the wabbit at the grocery store because she thought I would really like her. And so I built the story that the wabbit had her baby, but they told her to get her child back, it would be really good if she was placed in a nice, bigger home, preferably a human home, and where, she would have a little more stability and security financially and be able to provide for her daughter, which was the case.
Right. Would you say this is a children's book?
It's not for little ones. It's more maybe for older kids to kind of, as they're grasping, and especially, with a lot of kids come from broken homes. I did want to get the message across that no matter, again, whatever encompasses your family, and I'm hoping I'm saying this in a positive way because I know not all families are loving and adoring, but a lot of them are. And, through a lot of difficulties that you might go through, if you persevere and with love, you can make it. It may take a while, but you can make it.
And when your mom died, you stayed with your dad, right? You didn't have to go into foster care, but you worked with foster children, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you've kind of, been all around this. Really, it's a story of hope.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I wanted to get across to some child reading it, an older child, like maybe a preteen that might be in that situation. I know several people at work who are in the process of adopting, and they're social workers, and they certainly know, and a couple of them have read it and really liked it. But I also had people reading it who are leading they're young and, still single. And I said, what do you think? And I was expecting to hear, oh, it's dull and it's, it's too, I don't know, it's too sugary or something. And I walked in with this one guy. He was working with his family in their restaurant, and he saw me enter, and he came over and gave me a big hug. And he said, I could have read ahead, but I couldn't put it down. I wanted to know what was happening to her, a Rose. And I said, oh my God.
That's
and
cute.
It was really cute.
Yeah. Are you in a position to share the story? Do a reading at a library or at a bookstore?
Sure. That is something I would like to do. The first word I got out was to people, at work and my friends. One of my friends, she's up in Reno, and then she and her husband traveled from there to see their kids in San Jose, and she wants to talk to a couple of teachers and even retired teachers, and kind of get the word out. And I said, that's fine, that's great.
Yeah.
So and then I wanted to talk to there's a little library that that's where my library card is over here in Foley, and so I will be, I want to give them a copy of the book and see what they think. And they have different activities for children of different ages.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you going to keep writing?
Oh, yes. I've got everything outlined for the second book. I have to do a little bit more research. But I want to write a couple of more series on it. And so you see the progression of some of the characters grow up, get married, and this is after they've been diagnosed with learning disabilities and having a huge problem. And when, coming to find out, they've got like a genius IQ and they're very intelligent, and and they were able to go to college and move on. And one of the characters, I've got it in the book, he turns around to me, and I'm grandma. He says, "Grandma, how can we afford college?" I says, "We'll find a way. There's this thing called scholarships. You got to make good grades."
Yes, yes.
He goes, "Oh," and he'd just been diagnosed, but the teachers were really helping move doors open to him. I mean, it was just so, and that was when I did some research on, but I said, just have fun with it. It'll take care of itself.
Yes.
And so in the book, yes, I had to pay some, and then I also, we got a couple of scholarships, and we got them through. And I said, you can do whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah.
It may take a little longer, but there you go. And so that's what I did.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Listen, thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. You're working around my schedule. It's kind of crazy right now.
All right.
Thank you so much.
El Big Red Adventure is the name of our next book by Israel Montes, a retired former member of the California Department of Corrections turned author, all based on a road trip he'll never forget and never intended to write.
No, never. I'm not even an amateur writer. Nothing. Nothing. We planned this trip from El Grove, California to Mexico, 3,000-mile road trip. And my brother's Red Excursion. I call it Big Red Adventure because most of the stuff that happened inside the vehicle. It was a red vehicle, And anyways, we started off, no intention to write anything. I mean, seriously, nothing. But from the very beginning of our trip, you can imagine driving up there were 6 of us and filled with suitcases. And driving back, there were 7 of us. My sister met us in El Paso, Texas. And we were literally packed like sardines. I mean, we had no room in that vehicle to even move, which was terrible. And from the very beginning, I felt something special was really going to happen. A lot of special moments, chaotic moments. But 3,000 miles, we were in that vehicle for 7 days. And just from the very beginning, as we started, I go, wow, 1 second we're loving and the next second we're, at each other's throat. And I go, and my poor mom, man, she's very religious. She had the rosary in her hand. And, and then my dad is like, oh, my dad had medical issues. He passed away 3 years ago, but he had to go to the bathroom every 20 minutes. And I just gave him an excuse to smoke his cigarettes, So I had no pencil, I had no paper, I had nothing in my hand. I really didn't have anything. I go, oh my God, let me start writing this stuff down. Then I grabbed a notepad from here, a notepad from there, a pen from my mom, and whatever I had in my hand, I just started writing. I just started writing, scribbling paper, blah, blah, blah. Every single day something would happen. I would write. And then I had like maybe 50 pages of writing material, large paper, smart paper, medium paper, whatever I get my hands on,
What were some of the things that happened?
Well, just, first of all, we're all driving and everybody's talking about their kids and my kid's better than yours, or my kid's better than yours. And, then, just things like that. And, hey, I'm better than you, you're better than me. And, religion, we talked about religion, forgiveness and, politics, how that goes. And, all that. We just started, and it got chaotic sometimes. My oldest sister, Isela, my other twin brother, Louis, were getting into it for over one thing or another. And it's like, or dumb things. We were in a vehicle. I mean, what can you do but it's gossip and talk, pretty much.
Right. Well, isn't there one instance, one thing that sticks out for you?
Well, one nugget was when I was driving back, I left my teenage nephews in charge of my house. They were 17 years old. I told them to take care of my house. And then as we were driving back, they called me and goes, hey, uncle, blah, 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 blah. We had a little, mishap at the house, a hole in the wall with his cousin, and they got into a fight and they put a hole in the wall. But I know there was more to it. I know the testosterone level was high. They were 17 years old. I have both of their parents with me. They're both their moms with me, my sisters, and they're trying to kind of comfort me. Oh, no, they didn't do nothing in the house. They cleaned it up. Everything's good. but I know my mischievous nephew, so I'm driving. We're about 1,000 miles from home. I go, man, I know they screwed up my house. I know that, man, when I get home, it's going to be, I'm not even going to recognize it. You know what I mean? So that constantly was bothering me. I couldn't wait to get home, but we were over 1,000 miles from home, and my sisters are trying to reassure me that the home was okay. Well, they don't know their kids like I know my nephews. So, and then when I got home, it was like 12 o'clock at night. I was so tired, and I walk in. I can't even open the door. The door handle's busted. I was able to go in there. I open my window. I turn on my light, and it's chaotic. There's like, I know, like the movie Risky Business. You know what I mean? It kind of reminded me of Risky Business because I go in there. It's at least Tom Cruise cleaned up the house. These guys didn't do nothing. There was a big party with juvenile delinquent, 17 years old. Big hole in my wall. Dirt, grass, beer, cigarettes, everything in my house. I'm going, what the F? What's going on here? I was so upset. But the only thing they didn't do is they didn't go into my master bedroom, where I sleep. And that's the only thing that saved them. That was one thing. And then my twin brother, Luis, and my sister, Isela, we're going through Juarez, Mexico. If you don't know what Juarez, Mexico is, like the #1 burner capital of the world. I mean, there's a lot of murders going on there. So we had to go through that city to get where we were going. And then, in the middle of the night, my sister wanted to go to the pharmacy to buy some of the Resonate stuff, for her friends, medical supplies, you need a prescription for over here in California. So my brother told him, no, we're not going to cartel land here at 12 o'clock at night trying to find a pharmacy for you. We're going to get killed. And my sister was so animated about doing it. Like, they got into it so, it didn't even make sense. That's how they were, we went to a different pharmacy. They were closed. My sister wanted to go to another one. We just couldn't do it no more. It was scary going through that city. 7 people. We had 7 people driving back in an excursion. And the only people were the people in the front, my dad and my brother. But we were like, literally, we had no room in the back. There was no room to move. We couldn't do anything. We had maybe 10 suitcases back there, plus 7 of us. There's not many red vehicles. You see a red vehicle, you think this guy's a cartel guy or mafia guy or something.
Oh my
you know
God.
what I mean? So in a big, yeah, that was like chaotic. And then as we passed the border to El Paso, I was so happy we're in the United States. But I really wanted to go. I was fed up that I wanted them to take me to the airport. I wanted to fly home. I didn't want to go. El Paso, Texas. That was another 15 hours to get home, and I just wanted to fly home. I didn't care what it cost. I would have paid $2,000 to get on a flight to go back to Sacramento. I just didn't want to go. It was just chaotic. It was just chaotic, and it was like, man, this is not even real.
Yeah. Why should people read this book?
Because people can relate to the Hispanic community can relate to the story. Because I'm first generation here. Okay, a lot of people that are first generation here can relate to that story with their parents. Everybody has a story like that somehow, some way. But I wrote a book about it. But I talk to people out there, and they go, you know what? I have the same type of story, and they tell me the story. I go, yeah, it's in a different version, but the same type of story. Pretty much.
Are you doing book signings? Are you talking about the book?
I did do the book signing. They had a Latin a book fair here in Sacramento, which I went to. And James Olmos was there. The actor.
Yeah,
he's big on he's big on books. He was there, and then I got to meet him. Everything. Gave him one of my books. And there's honestly, to me, it's not. People think it's a great book. It's only 60 pages, but it tells a story. It's very easy to read. You know what I mean?
Well,
and when people read it, they go, yeah, well, you know what, man? I have a story like that.
But in the end, do you all love each other?
Oh, yeah. We're very loving. You read the book at the end, and we calmed down. As we got closer to home, we kind of relaxed and got, we all said we loved each other and stuff, and, apologized for all the negative gossip. It's, it took a little bit for me to, my nephews, because they really messed up my house but I forgave them too, after, let time go by. But no, we're very loving now. We always talk about that. We always talk about, the story, the journey that we took. But no, at the end of the day, when we got closer to home, it was like, it was loving.
Great.
You
gonna keep writing?
And this is probably it. It was kind of weird because this happened in 2007. And literally, this happened in 2007. Literally, when I got home, I put it in a manila envelope. I put it behind my dresser, and it sat there for like 7 or 8 years.
Oh, geez.
I never even pulled it out. Nothing. For whatever reason, one day I just started pulling it out, and then I just started putting an order and go, no, let me write a book about this. And it took me a couple of years. I would write a paragraph here, a paragraph there, and then got it done, you know.
Well, you say in your synopsis here that when your dad died, that was kind of like, got to write this book.
Yes, I have to write this book. Yes, it was due to write this book, and so much happened, you know, during that time. After my dad passed, my dad died. I found out I had a half brother. You know,
What?
You know, yes, it was in there. It's in the storybook. You know what I mean? So I wrote that in the storybook.
It's in El Big Red Adventure?
Yes, it's towards the end. You know, my sister took a swab of, you know, my dad and sent it into the DNA thing, and found out we got a hit that we had an older brother. And I added that to the story. I thought it was a good touch to it, you know.
How was your mom with that?
My mom was like, you know, they were older. I mean, they hadn't been married 60 years. So it's like, you know, it was hard for my mom, as you know, of course, but she accepted it. You know, it was, you know, it wasn't our brother's our fault. I mean, he's a great person, our brother Ronnie. I mean, he's older than us. I mean, this is before they were married.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
And
this was before they were married. So, you know, and he said he didn't remember him. He probably did it. So I don't know. But I included him in the story at the end, and it was kind of touching, you know, pretty much.
You're funny. You are funny.
Yeah. But this book is, you know, it relates to a lot of people, especially in the Hispanic community, that people can relate to this. I just wanted to write a story about I could probably never take another, I remember I wrote that in my notes that I can never take another, you know, journey like this with it's too chaotic. You know? But I'm glad we did. I'm glad we did it. I'm older now. I was in my 40s then, and now I'm in my late 50s now. So I'm glad I wrote it.
All right. Well, I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad I got to talk to you about it.
Yeah. I don't know. You know, my intentions are not to really make any money on it. If I can, I mean, you know, it is. I just wanted to share the story with people.
All right.
You know. Pretty much. I wanted to share the story. I took a lot of pictures and photos. I was a photographer. I was a video. I got a lot of video of, you know, my mom and her best friends who have all passed away. She's the last person alive from all her friends back in school, you know, back when they were teens. Yeah. So I have all that for memories for them.
That's awesome.
I think this would be a great Netflix movie. You know what? I'm happy I wrote it. I'm probably never going to write anything again, but, you know, it was an adventure my family and I took, and I'll share it for the rest of my life, you know.
All right.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.